Was Abraham Lincoln gay? Abraham Lincoln. The name alone conjures images of honesty, leadership, and national unity. The man who preserved the Union, freed the slaves, and delivered some of the most powerful speeches in history. But what if there was something about Lincoln that history books rarely mention? Something deeply personal. Something controversial. Today, we dive into a question that has sparked debate among scholars, fueled books, and intrigued the public for decades. Was Abraham Lincoln gay or bisexual? Stick with us as we explore hidden letters, secret friendships, and a private life that may reveal a side of Lincoln you've never imagined. Part 1. Why this question matters. Before we go any further, let's get one thing straight. This video isn't about sensationalism. It's not about rewriting history with modern agendas. It's about asking honest questions, backed by research, about a man whose personal life has remained largely in the shadows. Understanding the full human experience of someone like Abraham Lincoln doesn't diminish his greatness, it enhances it. Because if someone can lead a fractured nation while carrying private struggles the world never knew about, that makes them even more remarkable. Now, let's begin with the first major clue. Part 2. Joshua Speed. The man in Lincoln's bed. In 1837, a 28-year-old Abraham Lincoln arrived in Springfield, Illinois, to begin his law career. Looking for a place to stay, he ended up sharing a room and a bed with a local merchant named Joshua Speed. The two young men slept in the same bed for nearly 4 years. That's right, 4 years. Now, to be fair, bed sharing among men was not unheard of in the 19th century. Hotels were expensive, rooms were few, and sharing a bed didn't necessarily raise eyebrows. But here's where things get interesting. Lincoln and Speed weren't just roommates. They were emotionally entangled. In letters, Lincoln expresses despair at the thought of losing Speed. He writes about his emotional turmoil, anxiety, and loneliness in ways that seem, well, more romantic than platonic. One biographer even described their parting as heart-wrenching for Lincoln. And when Speed eventually married, Lincoln fell into a deep depression. Was it the loss of a friend, or something more? Psychologist and author C.A. Tripp, in his controversial book The Intimate World of Abraham Lincoln, argues that Lincoln's relationship with Speed was not only emotional but likely sexual. Tripp claims that their closeness, the passionate tone of their letters, and Lincoln's reaction to Speed's marriage point to a same-sex romantic attachment. Of course, not everyone agrees. Part 3. More than just Speed. Other men in Lincoln's life. Speed wasn't the only man Lincoln shared a bed with. Later in life, while he was president, Lincoln often spent nights with his personal bodyguard Captain David Derrickson. Several sources suggest that when Mary Todd Lincoln was away, Derrickson would sleep in Lincoln's bed in the White House. One officer reportedly joked that Derrickson had a key to the president's bedroom, and that the two were very intimate. Even before the presidency, there were other cases. Lincoln once shared a bed with William Greene while working in New Salem. He also roomed with Elmer Ellsworth, a young man he reportedly adored and grieved deeply when Ellsworth died in the Civil War. To some scholars, this repeated pattern of close male companionship, especially with bed sharing, suggests a behavioral consistency that can't simply be explained away by 19th century social customs. But others argue that we're projecting modern ideas onto historical realities. And they might have a point. Part 4. Marriage to Mary Todd, genuine or a social front? Lincoln married Mary Todd in 1842. They had 4 sons together. On the surface, this might appear to settle the matter. But many historians have described Lincoln's marriage as cold, even distant. Mary was volatile, deeply emotional, and at times struggled with mental health. Lincoln, on the other hand, was emotionally withdrawn, perhaps even absent. Some biographers have suggested that Lincoln avoided intimacy with Mary, and that the emotional heart of his life may have been directed elsewhere, perhaps toward his male companions. Still, others argue the opposite, that Lincoln was simply a deeply reserved man who loved in his own quiet way, and that his marriage, while imperfect, was real. So who's right? Part 5. The debate among historians. The historical community remains divided. Scholars like C.A. Tripp and Larry Kramer have passionately argued that Lincoln was either gay or bisexual. They point to emotional letters, patterns of behavior, and the intimate language Lincoln used with men, but never with women. Critics, however, say this is revisionist history, reading too much into practices that were common at the time. In the 1800s, men often expressed deep emotional bonds in letters without it meaning anything romantic or sexual. Bed sharing was a matter of convenience, not desire. And, crucially, there is no explicit evidence, no diary, no confession, no testimony, that definitively proves Lincoln had a same-sex relationship. Why the question still matters: so, was Abraham Lincoln gay? Bisexual? Or simply a product of his time, misread through a modern lens? We may never know the full truth. But maybe the truth lies not in the label, but in the humanity. Whether Lincoln was straight, gay, or something in between, he was a man of compassion, intellect, and vision. A man who led a divided country through its darkest hour, even while wrestling with private battles the world never saw. And maybe that's the most powerful part of his legacy. Because the most enduring leaders aren't perfect, they're real. And maybe, just maybe, Lincoln was more real, and more human, than we ever imagined. Would you like me to generate this script as a professional voiceover with pacing and music suggestions? I can also help with visuals or cut it into video segments.